My full name is Lloyd C. Pitts. I'm 86 years old. I was in World War II in the Normandy invasion. We had it tough growing up. We didn't have anything. We couldn't even go to town hardly. No cars. We didn't have Walmart or McDonald's. We didn't have anything really. Very little money. Hitler was he was sweeping the world if he could. You know, he was taking everything that he came close to. So I think in that case he had to be stopped. You know, we couldn't be under that dictatorship. You know, some country had to stop it. So I was drafted when I was 18, and they took me down to Camp Walters, Texas. I had 6 weeks of training. That's all I had. Then they took me, put me on a train, since there was not airplanes and things in those days to speak of. So we got on a train, went to New York, and they put me on one of the biggest boats that I ever seen, the Queen Mary. It was a massive gathering, and it just took several days to get everybody there. When we got there, well, our boat sat there, and we waited for other boats, and there was a total of 5,000 big battleships, big, heavy loaded, and then there was hundreds and thousands of smaller boats. They was almost bumping each other in the water. There was so many. And we sat there about a week, and by then everybody had got there, and they had calibrated everything that could be calibrated. They knew how deep the water was, exactly how far it was to the shore, and everything was calibrated right down to the last inch. But what they couldn't calibrate was the weather. And so we sat there, and it totaled out probably a week or 10 days from the very start to the finish. And finally they said we can't hold this massive thing here any longer, so we're going to have to give the order to go ahead with it. And so they gave the order, or they had planned. They said this was on the 3rd, June the 3rd. They had this big meeting, and they finally said, well, we can't hold this massive thing here any longer. We're going to either have to go or back out, one of the two. So the plan was, it's a lot different than what you might think. When they say hand-to-hand combat, it was not like you and me fighting. In fact, I've seen thousands and thousands of our people going on board, but you couldn't hardly see a German at all, because years before they had planned this, and they had these machine gun placements already fixed up. They was concrete pillboxes, they called them, and they had the guns set up to where they could actually just keep that place strafed all the time, that beach, and not even show themselves. Because they was in this gun placement, and the thing was preset, so they could just move that gun back and forth like this, and you wouldn't even see one. There was only one way you come home. The war either ended or you was killed. Now, when we started to get off from the big boats and load into the boats that land with, well, we was lined up here getting off and loading in these boats, and I said, well, what are they doing up there? They're passing out something. And the guy down the line says, they're body bags. I said, body bags? What's a body bag? And they said, well, it's a canvas like a pillowcase, only it's to put you in whenever you get killed. And every soldier will take one. I said, I'm not going to take one. And they said, well, you have to take one. And I said, no, I have to be here, but I don't have to take a body bag. And I didn't take one. And a lot of people say, well, what wave was you in? First, second, third, or what? But there wasn't anything like a wave. And the way that worked, once your boat got to the bank, you went on shore. And as it happened, I was one of the very first ones. I was in the Omaha. They call it the Bloody Omaha. It was supposed to be the worst one. I couldn't really tell much difference because they was all out there. But it was the second from the end. The beach run out here into the water, and this first one, they had a 50 mile. Each company had about 50 miles. And so we had about 50 miles. So as far as you could see, it was just beach. But the infantry had to go on because the tanks couldn't make it. So what they done, that just blew everything up, see? Because the storm now was so big that when the tanks crawled off from the end of that boat, they sunk. The water was much deeper than what they had calculated earlier. So the boats didn't do us any good. They also had gliders that they sent in behind, supposed to be in behind, and they miscalculated because of the storm, and they dropped them right on top of the Germans. So we lost most of them. They didn't even hit the ground, a lot of them. It dropped right square over them. So that lasted most of the day. We started just a break of day. And I said I was a private that morning, and by night I was a staff sergeant. As far as your eye could see either way, it was just, and if you never heard a death scream, it's not a pretty sight or a pretty sound. When they have one that's dead, there's usually 3 or 4 wounded. And so it was just death screams by the thousands, and so much noise you just can't believe how loud it was.